For more on this, let's bring in Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we have President Biden revealing his new winter plan to fight COVID, specifically that Omicron virus. Calls for everyone entering America to get a COVID test within 1 day of arrival, with the exception of illegal immigrants, of course. They are not required to get the test. They are not mandated to get the vaccine. They're simply allowed to be flown to regional airports all across this country. Roll out the red carpet, come on in, COVID tracking be damned.
Well, Joe, this is the greatest hypocrisy of modern times. If the COVID virus is so dangerous that for 10 months we didn't allow any travelers that were coming into this country legally from anywhere in the world, we closed our northern border with Canada, and yet Joe Biden then looks the other way, and particularly also Tony Fauci looks the other way and allows 1.6 million people to come across this border. We know they're from as many as 160 different countries, mostly from countries that have pretty much statistically zero vaccination rates. And then when they get here, as you just said, not testing most of them, and even when we test them and they test positive, then spreading them out and fanning them across the country on the taxpayer dime.
Absolutely.
The definition of hypocrisy.
It's not just hypocrisy, it's absolute insanity. When you look at the fact that, again, we just had a travel ban, 8 African nations, South Africa, vaccination rate around 25%. When you look at that snapshot there and then compare that to what's happening here, to your point, countries with basically zero vaccination, and to think that somehow tens and thousands of people, millions of encounters along that southern border, and we would not actually have the same standard there that we're actually setting for the world. And in the name of this Omicron virus, by the way, 38 countries that it's already been found in, it's already here in America. You bet your bottom dollar that coming across that southern border are variants that we don't even know about because they're coming from countries that aren't even testing.
Joe, if Mr. Biden wants to make Americans safer, he should secure the border, secure the southern border, and do it forthwith. We have the resources to do so. He simply lacks the will. Let's talk about what the drug cartels are doing while we're looking, and so we're overly concerned with the COVID, and particularly this variant, which is rather mild. They have snuck across 16,300 pounds of fentanyl this year. That's enough to kill every American 8 times over. Just a couple months ago in October, where we have data, they snuck across, and we seized over 15,000 pounds of methamphetamine. And they have as we've talked about before, they have the GDP of a nation state, approximately $30 to $40 billion. And we're allowing them to secure our southern border? This is, again, as you said, insane.
It's crazy. When you actually just break this down, right, because I'm glad you bring up the fentanyl, right? We have a nation in China that lied to the world, and millions of people died as a result of those lies. This administration still refuses to get to the bottom of what they knew and when they knew it. And now you couple that with the fact that these Chinese cartels have teamed up with the Mexican cartels to flood our borders with, to your point, enough fentanyl to kill every single man, woman, and child that calls this nation home 8 times over. What are we to do? Your point, you tweeted this the other day, the administration's COVID plan is no longer about science, it's about control. Seems to me that the one thing they need to get under control are the drugs coming across that southern border and security of that southern border before all of us pay the ultimate price.
Well, Joe, when you mix politics and medicine, the result is you get bad politics and bad medicine. And that's precisely what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done. And it's not advancing the cause. What he's done, Joe Biden's proved one thing. He's very good at imposing more restrictions, more mandates, and more barriers for us to move on and live normal lives. And it is increasingly about control. And then he's talking about mandating, trying to mandate a vaccine for 100 million American workers when we're in the middle of a labor shortage and a supply chain crunch that we haven't seen in decades. It, again, is madness. And elections have consequences for the folks back home.
It's really crazy. We have nurses and doctors walked off the job because they won't actually take the vaccine at a time when we need nurses and doctors more than ever. Ironically, a place like New York declares a state of emergency on the heels of an Omicron virus, while we have a worker shortage in the hospitals where we're seeing higher rates in some cases than at the beginning of COVID because of those forced layoffs due to those vaccination mandates. And yet at the same time, that governor declares declares a state of emergency, she doesn't say writ large, there will be no more flights coming in here in the dead of night going to Westchester County Airport with people who are untested and likely positive for the virus we're trying to stop.
Mm-hmm. They've taken away our liberties, but they haven't made us any safer. Case in point is comparing California, their rates of new COVID cases as opposed to Florida. They've gone a very different direction. California is still very restrictive with their citizens. In Florida, under Governor DeSantis, has been very free.
Right.
Well, Florida was averaging the lowest new case rates in the country, only 1,470 over a 7-day average last month. And California was at just under 6,300. So you were 4 times likelier to get COVID in California. So they're taking away our liberties, but they're not making us safer. And Joe, that's not science.
2 years after we saw the emergence of COVID here on U.S. soil, it appears we have learned practically nothing. Texas Congressman Pat Fallon, as always, my friend, God bless you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Joe, thanks. God bless. Take care.